everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, This Story Ain't Over. So today I thought I would do a little bit of a different kind of video. So I wanted to do a bunch of recommendation videos for you guys for different genres that I like and enjoy, that I've read from. A lot of you have kind of requested these videos, but I want to do it in a new and fun way. I've already done a bunch of genre book recommendations on Epic Book Recs, so I'll link those videos down below, but I wanted to do something a little bit different for you guys. And then I saw Hannah's video that went up recently where she tier ranks all of the series that she's read, and so I thought that that would be a really fun way to kind of recommend some books for you guys today. So I'm gonna try and do this for every genre that I want to do a recommendation video for. So today I'm starting with YA fantasies. So I'm gonna be ranking them in a very me kind of way. The tiers that I've made are very much what I feel about books, and they are not like the tiers that you usually see. The tier stuff has been going around on like YouTube and like Twitter and like everywhere, and I've seen a lot of people rank like popular YA books. So this is gonna be similar to that, but I've made my own tiers. So you'll see in just a second. So I have my tier set up here, so you can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tiers because I'm crazy. And I also wanted to really capture what kind of books these are and how I feel about them and kind of categorize them in a way. So top tier, which is basically God tier, but like I'm calling it something different. So the top tier is Stole My Breath Away tier, which is like a book that just stole my breath away, literally, and just took me by surprise and just totally consumed me, and it is one of my all-time favorites. And this tier I feel like I'm reserving more for books that like I loved the writing, and the writing is what like stole my breath away. This is like a very specific type of God tier, not just because I really like something about it, but I feel like this book is just a masterpiece. Like it's a piece of art that I think puts it on that tier. The next tier is Makes My Heart Ache tier, which is reserved for my faves, which like just thinking about them gets my heart soft and melty, and like I want the best for the characters in them, and I just want them all to be happy and wholesome and together and alive. But this tier is kind of reserved for my faves where I know my fave characters are gonna be put through the ringer, and that's part of what makes this series or book so good. The next tier is Nostalgia Fave tier, which is basically books that I found much earlier in my life that I still love to this day. They may not be perfect books, but I still really love them, and so therefore they are high up on the tiers. And then we have Deserves More Love tier, and I have a specific book in mind for this one, but this is basically the tier of books that I absolutely love, and I think they deserve so much more love because they are such quality books and they have so much to them and so much value to them. And then we have my weird little fave tier, which is basically random obscure books that I really love and enjoy and I think everyone should read, and so they are there. And then we have the solid tier. I don't actually know if I have anything for this, but this is just solid books. I like them, they're decent, they're good. Someone else will probably enjoy them more than I did. And then we have Not My Fave but Still Good tier, which is exactly what it is. And then we have Just Okay tier, which are the books I thought were just okay. And then we have the final tier, and I am incapable of really saying terrible things about any book because I do strongly believe that every book has its own audience and will find its own audience, unless it's like problematic. That's when I'll say it's a bad, terrible thing. Like something can be trash to me, but it can be someone else's like super favorite thing. So I can never really classify things that way, but my last tier is I just don't see the appeal tier, which is basically equivalent to trash tier. So yeah. Okay, so these are the books that I have here. There's a bunch. There's like over 30, I think. I'm not gonna count them, but we're just gonna go. I guess we'll just start from the first book on the left here, which is Carry On. And this is already gonna be a controversial video. You may have seen my popular books I don't like video, and I've gotten some comments on there by outraged people. And this was one of the books on that video. So my thing about Carry On is that I loved Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I love every book by Rainbow Rowell except this one. I just don't know why. Actually, I do know why. It's like kind of supposed to be a fantasy book, and it's very similar to like Harry Potter, but it's like its own take on fantasy and Harry Potter. For some reason, it just didn't work for me. Like I loved Simon and Baz and their relationship, but everything else about the book, I just didn't really like. So I just didn't really see the appeal in it. So just gonna put this here and stop talking, and you're all gonna hate me and stop watching this video. I'm just gonna keep going. Okay, King of Scars. So King of Scars is the series that takes place after Six of Crows and after Shadow and Bone. And out of all of Leigh Bardugo's series, it's probably right now my least favorite. And I'll say that just because this is only the first book in this duology that it's going to be. And I felt like I was expecting it to be a lot more than it was, or a lot different than it was. And for that reason, I just didn't enjoy it as much. But I do think it was a good book. Like, I thought it was just fine. So I think it works as like a solid tier book, because I did really love some scenes and aspects and things, but it just didn't live up to what I wanted it to be. All right, the next book is Kingdom of Back. And Kingdom of Back is one that I read very, very recently. It just came out in March. It's by Marie Lu, who I love and adore. She's one of my favorite like authors. And this is a book that just stole my breath away. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna put it up there. I did not expect it to do what it did, but it did. It is kind of a fantasy take on the Mozart siblings. So there's Mozart, and then he also had a sister who is commonly referred to as Nanowrimo. And this is the untold story of Nanowrimo and her growing up and seeing her brother get the spotlight for his talent and for his composing when she was just as good, but she didn't get the same opportunities and didn't get the same spotlight because she was a woman. And it was just so wonderfully, beautifully written. So that is why it has stole my breath away. God tier. Up there. Queen of Nothing. Oh, okay. I meant to put that with Cruel Prince. I have the two images instead of just the one. So I'm gonna put both of them in the same tier, obviously. Or actually, since I have both, I'll just put them separately. In general, I think this series is great. I really enjoyed it. It's definitely not one of my like super faves. So I think I'm gonna put it on solid tier, because I do think there are some fantasy series that are better than it, but I do think it delivered on what it did, and I really loved the characters and seeing them do the dramatic things that they do. Basically, The Cruel Prince is a fantasy series. It involves fairies and fae. It involves our main character whose parents are killed off by this fairy who used to be lovers with her mother, and so she and her siblings get taken to fairy and are raised there by this fairy and are taught to be cruel and heartless like the fairies there. And she kind of catches the interest of the prince, Cruel Prince named Cardan, and there's crazy stuff going on there, but the main character Jude is determined to kind of own herself and not bend to the wills of fairy, so she becomes very cutthroat to kind of protect herself and gets involved with a lot of political stuff. And I think it's a great fantasy series. It's solid shit, so it's on solid tier. The next one is Clockwork Angel, one of Cassandra Clare's series. It's the Infernal Devices series. Like, I'm putting in the first books of these series as stand-ins for the full series. So I think Clockwork Angel is gonna go to Makes My Heart Ache. It could go to Nostalgia Fave, but I don't think that it is simply good because I read it when I was younger. I think it's objectively actually really good, and I always think back on it and it makes my heart ache. Like, I cared so much about those characters, and I still care so much about those characters. And out of all of Cassandra Clare's series, I think that one was probably my favorite. I feel like some of this stuff will not be news to you guys, for those of you who have watched like some of my favorite books videos, but we'll see. Okay, the next one is Lady Midnight, which is the stand-in for the Dark Artifices series by Cassandra Clare. I have not finished it. I've only read the first two books. I still haven't read Queen of Air and Darkness. Don't come at me. I plan to read it very soon. I just haven't gotten around to it. But this, I think I would put in solid tier. This is gonna be controversial, but it's not a nostalgia fave for me, but I don't think it's like the best of her series either, and I think it's just solid. Like, I enjoy it, but like the fact that I just can't bring myself to like go and read the third one and sit down with it signals to me that I am just not as invested in this one as the other ones. But I still think it's a great series. I definitely recommend it. Like, all these ones in like solid tier I think are great and you should still be reading. So yeah, actually all of the books in this video are probably great and you should still be reading. I'm just telling you where I feel about them. Okay, Red Queen. I'm gonna put this in just, or actually, I'm gonna put this in I just don't see the appeal tier. I've only read the first book in that series and I didn't really like it. I thought it was alright. I kind of saw all of the like plot twists coming. I didn't think it was very original, so that's how I feel about it. But I do know a lot of people who love it, and I think the author's really nice as well. So I don't see anything super wrong with it. I just didn't personally like it and didn't really see the appeal. The next one is 1,000 Nights by E.K. Johnston, which for those of you who have been watching my channel for a while know is like one of my all-time favorite little weird books. And so it's going in my weird little fave tier because this book is one that is written so beautifully, but it's like something that like it's a hit or miss kind of book. Like most of the ones that are going to be in my weird little fave tier are hit or miss books, and they just happen to hit me and I love them. But 1,000 Nights is a retelling of Arabian Nights, or 1001 Nights, which is this ancient Persian tale of this young kind of princess or something who gets taken by this king who has been taking a new bride every night and killing her off the next morning. And so this main character, this new princess who goes to be his bride for the night, she devises a plan to keep herself alive. She starts to tell him a story, and as soon as her story ends, she'll start telling another one, so that she's always in the middle of a story when the night ends. And so he has to keep her alive until the next day, until the next night, to hear the rest of the story. And so she keeps doing this and keeps herself alive for 1001 nights, and then he finally decides to keep her alive forever. And so within that like larger story, there's like smaller stories, and that's where like Aladdin comes from. But in this kind of YA retelling, it is a young woman in the desert. She gets taken by this king. It's kind of like a feminist retelling, and the main character actually doesn't have a name. Her name isn't spoken throughout the whole book. It's narrated from her perspective, and I thought it was just one of the most interesting things. It's just one of those like weird little books that really takes your interest and doesn't let go. It is a very like literary, artistic fave, but I love it. All right, the next thing I have here is The Archived by V.E. Schwab, or Victoria Schwab, and I think this is gonna go on solid tier as well. It's a solid series. It is a series that was never finished. There was originally supposed to be a third book, but Victoria Schwab at the time didn't get the chance to publish that third book, so there's only 2 books out in that series. But it's basically set in our modern day. It's kind of like a paranormal book, and it follows our main character who can see ghosts and can also touch objects and like see back in time to like what has happened around those objects. But she's also someone who is tasked with hunting down ghosts that have kind of escaped, and in the paranormal part of this world, the dead are kept on shelves like books. But I just thought the concept of the dead on shelves and her kind of tracking down and hunting down these ghosts that escape and bringing them back was just so interesting. And there's like a sinister back plot going on. Really great series. Love it so much. So definitely recommend that one. All right, the next book is Dread Nation, which is another great series. I've only read the first book so far, and I think the second one's coming out soon, but this was a great one. It's set during Civil War time. It's like an alternate history book, and it deals a lot with race, but in like a really funny and interesting way. And it also has zombies. It has people rising from the dead and terrorizing everyone, and this book is just a wild ride. Honestly, it was really, really funny. I would definitely recommend the audiobook, but yeah, I thought it was a solid book. I really enjoyed it. It's not one of my faves, but it's a solid book, so I'm gonna put it there. All right, the next 2 books that I have are Fire and Graceling by Kristen Cashore. So these are 2 books that I absolutely love, and they're quite older. They're like older YA books, not like older in for age, but like they came out a while ago, and I absolutely love these so very much. The reason that I put both of the pictures is because I feel like they sit on different tiers for me. So for Graceling, I feel like it's a nostalgia fave. I actually really, really love it. I think it's amazing. But for Fire, I think it actually sits on my makes my heart ache tier. Like, I think I actually did really love Fire more than Graceling, just because of the way that femininity and like sexism is kind of dealt with in that book versus in Graceling. Graceling is also really great, but I feel like Graceling is more of a traditional YA heroine, whereas Fire was really different. So both books take place in a fantasy world, and in Graceling there are people who have graces, so they're different kind of magical powers, but they're very specific for each person. And so the main character's grace is the ability to kill. Like, she's just really good at killing, and so that's her grace. She's so good to the point where it's like kind of magical. And so she is like a head assassin for this king or something, and then she ends up falling for this prince of another country, and they uncover like this sinister plot in the country, and it's like really, really interesting. But she is a very traditional kind of strong female heroine, you know, kick butt, kick ass. But I think I liked Fire more because the main character, whose name is Fire, she is not like your traditional strong female heroine. Like, she doesn't kick butt, she's not like a fighter, but she is one of the strongest characters I have ever read. She's just so amazing. So in Fire, it's in like a slightly different part of the world, and in this part of the world there are monsters, and monsters are always beautiful and they attract people but are very deadly. And so there are a lot of like animalistic monsters like that. They're just so beautiful, they kind of attract you and then will hurt you. But there are also some human monsters, and that includes Fire and her father. And so Fire is deathly gorgeous and can kind of lure you into her, but it's not intentional and she can't really control it. And it's not in like a weird insufferable way, like she knows what she's doing, and she ends up kind of in a weird kind of hate to love relationship with this prince of another country as well. It's honestly been so long since I read that book, but I just love it so very much, and I think I want to reread it now, just like talking about it. All right, the next book on here is My Name is Memory by Anne Brashares, and she is the author of A Sisterhood of Traveling Pants, which I've never read, but like I heard about when I was younger a lot. But this book is one that I stumbled upon like really randomly and never expected to like it, and then fell in love. It's part fantasy, part historical fiction. It follows this couple who meet thousands of years ago and kind of re-meets in every life that they are reborn. So the main character, his name's Daniel in like his current life in our modern day, but he has memory of all of his past lives. And through each of his lives, the main connecting element was his love for this one woman, but she doesn't remember him in every life. And so he has constantly been reborn and found her in each life and tried to be with her, but every time it never works out. Like, they have been reborn into so many, like hundreds of lives, and they've never been able to be together. And so in this last life, they're trying to be together again. But it was just so wildly romantic and beautiful and really well written, and I thought it was just so interesting. So yeah, it's one of my weird little fave books that no one knows about, and I absolutely love it. Right, I'm gonna go a little bit faster because I've been taking way too long with these. Right, the next book that I have here is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. One of my all-time faves. A lot of people love this on BookTube. It is just an amazing series. It's a 6-person heist in a fantasy world. It's part of the Shadow and Bone world, the Grishaverse, and it just has characters that I really, really care about. But the one thing about Six of Crows is that I can see where someone might not like it, and for that reason, it is on my like god tier, but not on my like super god tier. It does not stole my breath away, but it is makes my heart ache so very much. Like, I care so much for these characters. So that is where it is. All right, the next book is another controversial one. And if you watch my popular books I don't really like video, you will also hear more about this. But Raven Boys is a book that I picked up because everyone loves it on BookTube, or like a lot of people do. And I just personally picked it up expecting a lot. I didn't really like it. It just honestly wasn't my like favorite thing. I thought it was cool, but I didn't think it was like amazing. I thought it was just okay, and I was fine with that. Like, I don't hate it. I don't think it was terrible, but I thought it was just okay. So I'm gonna put it on just okay, because I definitely enjoyed it more than Red Queen and Carry On, but I don't really like it more than that. Okay, the next book is The Savage Song by Victoria Schwab, one of her YA books, which I absolutely love, and it's just so amazing, and I wish more people cared about it. So I think it's gonna go on my Deserves More Love tier. I really love these characters. I don't love this book as much as like makes my heart ache, but I definitely think it is a wonderful book slash series. It's a duology, and it's such an interesting concept. It's set in like a version of our world, an alternate version, where the violent acts of human beings create monsters. So monsters actually spring out of the ground, out of thin air from the horrible acts that people commit. So there's like Korsai, which are flesh-eating demons, monsters. There are blood-drinking monsters, Malachi, and then there are Sunai, which are soul-eating monsters. And so one of our main characters, August, is a Sunai, and then the other main character is Kate, and she is kind of a monster hunter. And it is an awesome duology. The next book on here is The Winner's Curse, so the Winner's Trilogy by Mary Rutkowski, which is a series that I really, really enjoy and love, and it's a fantasy. It doesn't really have magic in it, but it is still a fantasy, and it's one that I really wish more people read and talked about. So it's going on my Deserves More Love tier. It is kind of a forbidden romance thing. It seems controversial when you hear the premise, but it's actually really nuanced and well done. It's about the daughter of this general whose empire has kind of taken over this other country, and she is walking in the market one day and stumbles upon this slave auction and ends up buying this slave. And it's this concept of the winner's curse, where you go to an auction or a gamble and you keep playing until you win, but then you realize once you win you have actually kind of lost. It's the winner's curse. And so she buys him and realizes that this might have not been a good idea, and so he comes to live with her, but you find out that he's kind of a secret rebel trying to turn things upside down, and it gets very interesting and very spicy and forbidden romancy. All right, the next book is A Crown of Wishes by Roshani Chokshi. I love all of Roshani Chokshi's books, so this one is probably going to go in the solid tier just because it's not my favorite of her books, but I thought it was really good and I really enjoyed it, so it's gonna go in there. It is a South Asian fantasy, Hindu mythology inspired fantasy. It's about these two characters, kind of like hate to love. They are two characters from opposing countries and they are coming together for this like magical competition in like a different realm to gain this prize that will help each of them in their respective countries. All right, the next book on here is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. So out of her 2 series, well now 3, but out of the 2 series that I've read, I like this one more. It's not my favorite, but it's good. I think it's a pretty good series. It has problematic elements to it, but I think it's a pretty good series. I remember I loved the first one and the second one, but I didn't really love the third one. And objectively, I don't think it's an amazing series, but I do think if you like that kind of thing, you will definitely enjoy it. City of Bones is definitely going to my nostalgia fave tier. And when I think of City of Bones and like the Mortal Instruments series, I only think of the first 3 because in my mind, the later 3 just don't exist and never needed to exist. And so therefore I just don't think of them. So that's where they're staying. Briar's War. Oh, that's a good one. I'm gonna put it in not my fave, but good tier. I thought it was a just okay kind of book. It wasn't amazing, but I do think it had its merits. It is an FF romance in a fantasy world where humans have created these artificial humans called automata who have kind of taken over and taken power away from humans and turned them into a subclass. So it's about a human named Isla who's trying to get revenge for the death of her family, and about a automata princess or like daughter of a general named Crier who's kind of questioning her humanity slash the fact that she's an automata and all of that, and then the two of them falling for each other. It's good, but it wasn't amazing. The next book is Aragon, and to be honest, this is a nostalgia fave for me. I loved that series as a kid and I will never not love it. It just holds such a big place in my heart, and I really hope that when the author eventually returns to write more books in that series, I will get to read them because I'm very, very excited for that. But yeah, it just holds such a big place in my heart. It is a like traditional quest fantasy about a boy who finds a dragon egg, and the dragon egg opens and he has a dragon and he becomes a dragon rider and goes on big quests, you know, trying to defeat the evil ruler in their kingdom, or in the world, Algasia. But it has like different races. It has dwarves, it has elves, it has dragons, it has like monstrous things, it has different cities, different countries and cultures and things, and he's learning magic down to the nitty-gritty and to the very conceptual philosophical parts of magic. And it's honestly just such a sweeping fantasy series and I love it so much. All right, the next thing I have here is Gilded Wolves, which definitely goes in my deserves more love tier. A lot of people keep comparing this to Six of Crows, and honestly, this is a book that honestly deserves so much more love. I can see why certain people didn't like it, but I think it did a lot of things really well, and I am so excited to see where she takes it in the next book. But it is, again, kind of a high story, multiple different characters, but it is like so diverse, and it takes characters from so many different backgrounds. It's also historical. It takes place in like the 1800s in France, and it also deals with cultural appropriation and colonialism in such an interesting and nuanced way, and I love it so very much. So yeah, I will praise that book to the high heavens, but it is amazing. All right, the next book is Girls with Paper and Fire, which I thought was really good, and I think it's a solid book. It wasn't my fave, but I definitely think it's a solid book and deserves all the love. It is an FF romance. It is an Asian inspired fantasy. It also kind of deals with rape as well, so trigger warnings for that. But it's set in this fantasy world where there are different kind of castes of beings. So there's kind of like animalistic moon caste that are kind of powerful and they're the ruling class, and the human class is kind of the lowest class. They're the paper caste. And so the king of this country takes this set of paper girls every year as his kind of concubines, and so the main character is one of these concubines and is taken away, but she ends up falling for one of the other concubines. She ends up falling for one of the other girls, and it's a really beautiful love story and of them trying to figure out a way to escape, and I love it so very much. It was such a solid, great book. Okay, the next one is Mirage by Somaya Dowd, and this one's actually going to go in my weird little fave tier because it's such a interesting book. It honestly deserves more love. Not enough people talk about it, but it is a kind of sci-fi fantasy book. It is a Moroccan fantasy, I believe, but it is really, really interesting. It is about this young girl in like a village who is taken away to become a body double of this princess who is like kind of terrible and cutthroat and horrible. She is taken away to be this body double and ends up falling for this prince. But there's also kind of a revolution aspect, and it's just really, really interesting. It also deals with colonialism and imperialism in a really interesting way. All right, the next one is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, the whole trilogy. And this is definitely gonna go in nostalgia tier for me. I love that series. I read it in high school and I thought it was just so amazing and wonderful. I know a lot of people don't really like it, especially in comparison to Six of Crows, but honestly, I really loved Lena's journey. I loved the Darkling. I loved the whole love triangle, and I love all these side characters as well. I love Nikolai, and I was just really invested in that world, and I just really remember enjoying reading it, and so that's why it's there. And I can't wait for the adaptation to come on Netflix. The next one is Star Touch Queen, and I'm gonna put that in Deserves More Love tier as well. I really, really enjoyed it. Thought it was wonderful. It kind of took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. It is a South Asian fantasy inspired by Hindu mythology. It's about our main character Maya, who has always had this horoscope of death kind of looming over her. And it's a Hades and Persephone retelling kind of, but also kind of like Cupid and Psyche, if you know that myth as well. So really, really great. I really enjoyed it. It was wonderful. Next one is Wrath in the Dawn, which is a good book. It's also an Arabian Nights inspired fantasy, 1001 Nights. I thought that this one wasn't like as artistic as 1000 Nights, but it was still really good, and it was like a nice romance, so it's a solid. Okay. Next one is Diviner. So this is kind of controversial. I put it in not my fave, but a good tier. It is definitely a great book. It is kind of more thrillery and mystery than fantasy, but it does have a bit of fantasy, occult, paranormal stuff. I just honestly didn't enjoy the first one as much as I was hoping to. It is kind of long, but I do think I might actually like the later books more, so that's why it's in not my fave but good tier. I definitely think it'll move up if I like the other books. But it's a book set in the 1920s, follows a large cast of characters, and it follows a series of like occult like murders, and they're trying to solve the mystery basically, and it's really creepy at times. All right, next one is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir, which is one of my all-time faves. So you know this is probably going to straight to the top, and it's at makes my heart ache tier. Like I love it so much, but I can see the flaws in it, but I just love it so much. I love these characters so very much. It's a big sweeping fantasy. It is multi-POV. It follows kind of like a soldier and then like a young girl who's becoming a rebel, and it is just a wonderful series. And it's also kind of Game of Thrones-esque in the amount of people who die and the unexpected plot twists and the sweeping nature of it. And I think it's just so wonderful and deserves way more love than it does, and I just love it because it has brown kids on the covers as well. All right, the third last book is A House of Salt and Sorrows, which I thought was like just okay. It was a good book, like Story by the Sea. It's kind of a murder mystery. It follows like some ghosts. It's kind of a retelling of 12 Dancing Princesses as well. It's really interesting and weird little fantasy. I enjoyed it. I just didn't think it was like amazing. Serpent and Dove is probably gonna go in solid tier. I thought it was a solid, fun fantasy romance. It's between a witch and a witch hunter. I know it's been really big on BookTube. A lot of people love it or don't love it, but I thought it was a solid book. I enjoyed it, so it's going on that tier. And then the last one is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. And not gonna lie, I knew where this was gonna go when I was creating that first tier. It's going on the top tier, stole my breath away tier. This is a book that like I knew nothing about going into it, and the second I picked it up, it stole my breath away. Like, it is one of those books that genuinely stole my breath away. Like, I could go back and read it and I would still, oh my god, like the writing is so gorgeous, but also the world is just so beautifully thought out and imagined, and it is one of those books that I definitely think you should go into without knowing much, but just know that it is a fantasy. It's multi-POV, but not like in a very strict sense, more like an omniscient general narrator who kind of flips between characters. It has kind of a magic system that is very specific and whimsical and interesting, and also really kind of grounded as well. I definitely like the first book more than the second book, but in general, it is Stole My Breath Away tier. So those are all of them. 2 books on Stole My Breath Away, 4 on Makes My Heart Ache, 4 on Nostalgia, 4 on Deserves More Love, 3 on My Weird Little Fave, a bunch on solid tier. Obviously, I think a lot of books are just solid, and I don't have bad things to say about them. Not my fave, but good tier, just okay tier, and I just don't see the appeal tier. Yeah, that was interesting. This turned out a little bit different than I thought it would be. I didn't realize I would have so many solid tier books. But either way, I kind of knew where most of these were gonna go, and I'm very happy with how this turned out. I hope this gave you a kind of an idea of each of these books and what I feel about them, but I honestly think all the books on this tier thing are great books and great series and great fantasy recs for you guys to go pick up. So that is about all I have for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and that you're not gonna go cut me in the comments, but it's okay if you do. I know I dragged some of your face, but I hope you guys enjoyed. Please let me know if you did like this tier thing, and I will do it for the next recommendation video that I do. But other than that, I got nothing. So comment down below all of the choices that you disagreed with and totally agreed with, and if you are new to some of these books, tell me which ones you're interested in reading. I would love to hear all of your thoughts. But thank you so much for watching, and until my next video, please remember that this story ain't over. Bye.